Welcome to In the Money, sponsored by Flyer Financial Technologies, the company that builds cutting-edge technology designed to solve asset and wealth management firms' toughest trading workflows. In this podcast, we help advisors and asset managers understand how technology is transforming the wealth tech sector. We'll cover how to leverage technology for faster, smarter investment decisions, megatrends, and more. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to the ATO podcast, where we're bringing you insights from the leaders shaping the financial industry. We're coming to you live from the American Trust Organization's annual conference, a gathering of the sharpest minds in the trust and wealth management space. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Trasha Schwendener, Managing Director at F2 Strategies. Trasha has nearly 2 decades of experience helping firms navigate the intersection of client management, fintech, and strategic growth. F2 Strategies is a consultancy that helps firms with technology implementation and operational strategy, which makes Trasha the perfect guest to discuss the challenges facing our industry today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rusty.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we go back a little ways, but it's kind of funny. I think we met at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think we've talked on Zoom calls a dozen or so times. We've never met in person. So today we actually get to spend some time together.
You're right.
So that's exciting for me. And I do love this conference, a very well-attended C-level conference in the trust space. And so it brings really thought leaders here. And I know you're speaking later, so this is exciting. So I want to kick things off with a powerful quote you shared from Chris Staples at Barrett Trust. And you told me we were going to use it. So here we go. We are a thought-based industry, but we do not give our people time to think. I think that's a pretty profound statement. How does that tension between being a thought-based industry and the reality of a really packed schedule define the problems you're solving at F2 Strategies?
Yeah, you're right. That is a very powerful statement, quote, if you will. And I had to ask him to repeat it to me later on that afternoon that he said it back in February of this year, I believe. And then a couple of days later, as it was kind of stewing, and I was thinking about what could we do perhaps to help in this situation? Because he's right. Knowing and been in the industry for a couple of decades, knowing what he was talking about made sense, but had never really thought about it from the way that he had stated it. Nonetheless, as I said, I was trying to think about some ways that they could reduce or things that they could eliminate to get back the time that they need to spend with their clients. There's many things that I would say we could throw into that list, but I'm just going to pick out 3 that seem to come up and have come up quite a bit over the past couple of years. Account onboarding across the board is very time intensive, paper, manual, all the things that goes into bringing on a new client, forms, applications, getting that information to the client, from the client back to your people and the wealth team. That is something that can be streamlined perhaps and automated. Another is account reviews and or client meetings. Similar, they have a lot of prep work that's required ahead of time. Again, a lot of paper, data gathering, information gathering. And then once the account review or the client meeting happens, then you have to do some follow-up. That takes time. Is there an opportunity for automation there? Perhaps. Another thing that came to mind was just distribution approvals. Discretionary distribution approvals are, for whatever reason, they're somewhat complicated in some of our organizations, depending on what type of trust it is and how many approvals are needed and how many offices you have. That can be a time drain for some of the advisors and their team, quite honestly. Now, those are just some functions that I came up with or that we came up with when I discussed it with my team that could perhaps be automated. Automation can happen. It can be great. However, if there are no processes or procedures in place, the automation is going to take longer. So we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think, on that point, it's the whole garbage in, garbage out, right? If your processes aren't working, it doesn't matter how great the technology is, it's going to take a long time for things to work if they ever do at all. And I think in our industry too, there's certainly an evolution going on. It's evolving and changing, and it's driven by people, right? And kind of the change in our client bases is one group gets older and the other group kind of comes into what we're doing.
Yep.
But we also see technology supporting pretty rapid change and adoption of new processes for sure. What are the biggest opportunities? And I think in the context of that, what are firms realistically willing to tackle these days?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it really depends on where they are.
Yeah.
You talking about the industry as a whole and the changing in technology. It really depends on where they are in their process. We'll probably mention sometime today and or tomorrow during this conference where the trust industry is in terms of the population here that's doing the work, that's aging out.
Sure.
So that's a challenge that we've experienced and that we've seen over the past 5 to 7 years. That pool of resources that's needed to replace those that are retiring is not as deep as it used to be.
Right. And I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they talked about that too. There is somewhat of a war for talent, and being able to attract people to this part of the world to work is a challenge. And so not only, I mean, I think people maybe not necessarily or shouldn't necessarily think of the trust world as being kind of old and sleepy. It doesn't have to be. And the clients that we're starting to serve more are more and more like us, right? They're Gen X, millennial, and they want to sit down across from somebody that probably looks and feels and talks a lot like they do.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so that's one thing I'm thinking about as you're talking. But, along this idea of there being a new identity, I think I've got a question. So how, many firms I think are redefining themselves. So in a market where technology is paramount, what does it mean for a trust organization to have a strong identity change? And how do they determine who their audience is or who they want their audience to be?
Mm-hmm. Very good statement. We find a lot of our clients asking that or asking us to help them define that. We feel that the trust industry is somewhat at a crossroads or diversion, if you will, probably for the past 5 to 7 years, perhaps. We ask our audience, the clients that come to us, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
Who is your audience? Who do you want your audience to be? Do you want to be a trust company or do you want to be an RIA? Sometimes we see organizations seeking options to become more competitive.
Sure.
So they're looking at that other alternative, or should we add on an RIA? How does that work? So then we go down the path of kind of bifurcating and then joining the two if those are options. If you're a trust organization, you have to follow different rules and regulations than an RIA does. So, account onboarding that we just spoke about is going to be very, very different than it is and would be at an RIA. So if you're a trust company and your book of trusts is, less than 50% of your total book and the rest is agency or investment accounts, then maybe you need to look at, are there other options? And we would talk with the client, and we have in this particular situation, and advise them to do a full business assessment, looking at their accounts, at their profit and business model, all of the tech stack. What technology do you have in place? Assessing, do you need to remove anything or bring something on? Because there are options to remove those agencies or investment type accounts to a different platform, off the trust platform, and like a sub-custodian model. But looking at it from a very strategic standpoint needs to happen first, and helping to define if that their identity, if that's where they're coming from in terms of trying to determine, do we focus purely 100% on our trust book of business, or do we grow it another way by adding on agency or investment accounts?
Gotcha. All right. Well, very interesting. Let's move on to another topic. Let's talk about the client experience and the role of technology, because I think there's a lot that can be dug into there. There are so many choices these days, whether it be a trust accounting system or a note taker or performance measurement system. You can do any of these things. So everyone talks about the client experience, and I'm thinking about this from the standpoint of a firm's identity being expressed through what they're doing and how they present it. What does that client experience term mean to you in the context of a trust organization? And how is it different from just good customer service?
Yeah, that's a good one too. Over the years, and literally multiple years, I've had clients say to me, and in the different roles that I've served, my client or the end client wants a better experience. They want us to be more like Fidelity or next name firm. And so my response has always been, well, what does that mean to you? Have you asked them? How do they define a better experience? Well, that has not been the same response across the board. Typically, I've gotten about 3 different answers. One, the end client wants, to your point, a better client portal or online experience, whether it's social media applications or a direct client portal, log on to the web. The other answer was not necessarily related to an online client experience, but the client itself wants a better relationship with the advisor, with the firm, and their beneficiaries. So that brings in a whole nother mix in terms of communication, not just online, but if you're working with your client who might be a baby boomer and their heirs or their beneficiaries are Gen X, millennials, or perhaps Gen Z, their communication style is completely different. So you have to figure out as an advisor, trust company, or firm, who's your target audience, and so that you can then make sure that you're meeting the client expectations and make that experience, as exceptional as can be. The third response that I've often gotten from my client about their end client is we have clients that want to drive more of what their portfolios look like, what's happening in it, make more decisions alongside of or with the advisor. So can that happen? Sure. There are applications that allow the end client to do trading, request buys or sells, make distribution requests, transfer monies between accounts. Now, if that's going to happen, that needs to be a organization approved setting, if you will, or implement the appropriate measures in place so that confidentiality and security is looked at from the utmost level.
Yep. You mentioned kind of the Gen X millennial force moving, and that's a group of people that has grown up around technology and they've fully embraced it. And their expectations are quite a bit different. Their expectations around partnership, transparency, collaboration are very different. And you think about what a client portal may have looked like 10 or 15 years ago. Really, it was just kind of a dump of information. And there really wasn't that way to kind of foster that communication and dialogue back and forth. How is technology supporting that in kind of first tier, kind of leader organizations?
Yeah, so a couple different things there on that end. Modern client portal, or if you will, or modern experience compared to what you mentioned, years ago, what the client portal may have looked like or what data would be presented to the client. For the advisor, I think it's even more important now than it was 10, 15 years ago. The client can enhance that experience because they can go online now. If they're on the phone, let's say with the client, they're online and they're confused. There's so much noise on the portal, and they can look at exactly what they're looking at, talk them through to decrease the noise, explain what they're looking at, so in turn making that experience better for the client. Also for the advisor, where things are now with different applications, they can perhaps see how often they can come to the website. How many times, is it around a certain event that might have spiked the interest or the peak? And depending on, again, the platform, there are business analytics that can be used to help the advisor or the firm know where the client's coming from when they come to the site. So where were they that prompted them to come to look at my portal to see what their account balances were? So kind of understanding the holistic picture of that experience or what's driving the client to do what they were doing online.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I work at a portfolio management trading company, and people are coming to us asking, for greater insights, greater clarity. They want to be able to collaborate with their clients. So I think it's not too dissimilar. So maybe your first impression and first point of contact is uber critical. What are the biggest hurdles you see firms facing with account onboarding, and how can a streamlined and thoughtful onboarding process set the tone for the entire client relationship?
Yeah, first impressions are important in whatever industry you're in. I'm sure you would agree with. Wes, I mentioned account onboarding earlier being a process or a function that is time consuming and should and can be automated. The client experience, first impression. So I spoke a minute ago about processes. Well, you'll hear tomorrow when we speak, and you've probably heard this before, people, process, and technology.
Right.
Well, people is the first thing, the first part of your first impression when you meet a prospect and into a client. So making sure that dialogue between you and your client or your prospect goes well, setting expectations and stating them clearly and concise. Moving on to the process of onboarding that client or prospect to become a new client. What process do you have in place so that it can be automated to make that first impression even more streamlined so that there's no hurdles that the client would have to get through.
There has to be an element of standardization within an organization when that new client, that prospect comes in, because it's an optimized process, right? And making it right really helps set the tone and helps the client understand the culture of the firm and the value you're bringing. So it helps them knowing, like, the next time they come, they know what to expect, right? And so that kind of permeates that interaction and the relationships that's built over time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that gets us a little bit to more kind of strategic communication. Discuss the importance of time to think a little bit earlier. How can technology empower firms to have a more intentional and impactful communication with clients? So is it about sending more emails, or is it about using a strong data strategy to send the right information at the right time?
I think it's both, but probably more one other than the other. But, we have a part of our company, our marketing team, merged with us about a year and a half ago, and they are awesome. Prior to the merger, they worked specifically with RIAs and financial advisors. I brought them into meetings with some of our trust clients, which has been very interesting because their approach is more on the strategic side, working with creating campaigns, helping the advisors create campaigns, marketing strategy, using whatever technology the clients has in place right now, their CRMs, whatever marketing they might have in place, whatever their website looks like, whatever branding they have in place. So that team has helped kind of open some doors for the meetings that we've had with some of our trust clients. We've talked about clients' experience before, specifically on the social media side. That's exactly what they do. They know how to bring social media into marketing, digital marketing, and have success stories that we love to share. Whether it's working with new web design or using AI or other approaches, we believe that there is a way to use technology with marketing to communicate with your existing clients as well as to build your client base.
Right. It is a growth and retention story. I mean, it's the power of and. I think that firms might find themselves in a little bit of a bucket, like, I'm good at this, but not that, so I'm going to avoid it. But having that ability to communicate and provide real-time updates to clients in an automated way frees that trust administrator or portfolio manager up to be able to come back and spend more meaningful time with them face-to-face potentially, right? So if you can schedule that quarterly email and if it's in a form and it just all pulls it together via AI, fantastic, right? Review it, send it out the door, and then you've got time to pick up the phone and do the real meaningful things, or, maybe there's a tool where the client can say, hey, tell me about my trust right now. Tell me about my investments. And in an automated way, some of that information can just flow back. You don't have to necessarily spend a half hour. Let me pull up your account, Mrs. Jones. And let's see what's in there. Let's print out a report. Golly, the dreaded reports. So I totally hear that. And we're doing that on my side of the business too. So let's wrap this up with this question, Trasha. So we're at the ATO conference and you've had the good fortune to spend some time with your counterparts at the various firms. If there was one overriding theme that you heard from them on the first day of the conference, what was that?
I would think that the one overriding theme has been making sure that they talk about communication are working with their peers and understanding what they're doing maybe better than they are perhaps, and how they can bring in the decisions that have been made at other shops that will help them grow and be better. Gotcha. It makes a lot of sense. So Trasha, thank you so much. This has been a real eye-opener on the strategic role of technology. To bring it all back to where we started, you've shown us that by embracing the right technology and process, trust organizations can reclaim the time their people need to spend with their clients and kind of get back to what's really important. For our listeners who want to learn more about you and F2 strategies, where should they look? Very good. Well, thank you, Rusty, for having me. I've appreciated this. If anyone does want to get in touch with me, certainly can go to our website, f2strategy.com, my LinkedIn profile, Trasha Schwendener, or I'm a member of ATO and my contact information is on their website as well. That's great. So that's all the time we have today. Thank you, Trasha, for an incredible conversation. And thank you all for listening to the podcast recorded live from the ATO annual conference. I'm Rusty Sommer from Flyer Financial. Thanks, Rusty. All right, bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to In the Money. the show that delivers advisors, asset managers, broker-dealers, and other technology service providers the knowledge they need to navigate this industry. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Flyer Financial Technologies. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.